It was a crisp fall afternoon in a lively city park in Chicago. The air was filled with the mingling scents of dried leaves, caramel apples from a nearby food stand, and the earthy freshness of the towering trees surrounding the area. The swings squeaked and creaked as they moved, and children's laughter mixed with the occasional bark of a dog chasing its owner. Emily, a tall, confident African-American girl of 11, sat on a bench, clutching a snack her mother had packed. As her gaze wandered across the park, she noticed a blonde girl, a bit younger, around 8 years old, who looked somewhat out of place as she sat alone on one of the swings. Emily had always been friendly, and she couldn't ignore the girl's slightly somber face, watching other kids play around her but seemingly hesitant to join. Taking a deep breath, she decided to go over and introduce herself. "Hi, I'm Emily," she said, smiling warmly as she approached the girl. She held out a small bag of cookies. "Would you like some? My mom packed too many for me, and I thought maybe you'd want to share." The girl looked up, surprised, but her blue eyes sparkled with a hint of curiosity. She hadn't expected anyone to talk to her, especially someone older. "I'm Lily," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As she looked from Emily's friendly face down to the bag of cookies, her small fingers twitching slightly, as if she wanted to reach for them. "It's nice to meet you, Lily," Emily said, encouragingly. "The chocolate chips in these are really good, and my mom always buys this brand." She laughed, trying to make Lily feel at ease. "She says they're her favorite too. Want to try?" Lily hesitated, glancing toward the walking path. Her mother, Sarah, was watching her from a distance, her face expressionless. Despite the lack of an approving nod, Lily's curiosity and hunger won over, and she moved her hand toward the cookie bag. Just as her fingers touched the edge of it, they heard a sharp voice. "Lily, sweetheart, don't take that," Sarah said, moving quickly toward them with a look of disapproval directed at Emily. Emily quickly pulled her hand back, eyes widening in surprise, as Sarah approached, her steps firm, heels clicking against the pavement. Lily withdrew her hand too, looking down as her cheeks turned pink. She gave Emily a hesitant, apologetic glance, unsure how to respond. "I told you not to take food from strangers," Sarah said. Her voice softened but laced with a firmness that left no room for objection. She gave Emily a glance, her lips pressed in a thin line. "I was just trying to share," Emily stammered, her heart sinking. She had only wanted to make a friend, and now she felt embarrassed. She took a step back, wondering if she'd done something wrong. Sarah's face softened for a moment, but her gaze was unwavering. "I'm sure you meant well, but Lily doesn't need any cookies today, thank you." Her tone was polite, but the edge of rejection hung heavy in the air. Lily looked from her mother to Emily, then back again, and reluctantly returned the bag of cookies. Emily watched as her hopeful gesture of kindness fell away, feeling the weight of rejection she didn't fully understand. As Sarah walked away, pulling Lily along by the hand, Emily stood rooted in place, her outstretched hand now empty. She could feel her cheeks flush as she clutched the bag of cookies, wondering what had just happened. Her mother had always taught her to be kind, to reach out, to share, and she genuinely wanted to make a friend. But Sarah's rejection felt personal and confusing, a rebuff that lingered in Emily's chest like a sting. Not far from the swings, Sarah led Lily over to a nearby bench. She knelt in front of her daughter, smoothing down the collar of her jacket with brisk, almost mechanical motions. "Sweetheart, you need to be more careful about who you're talking to," Sarah began, her voice low but firm. "I don't want you accepting food or talking with strangers in the park. You know that's not safe, right?" Lily looked down, twisting a small lock of her blonde hair around her finger. "But she seemed nice, Mom," she murmured, glancing back over her shoulder at Emily, who was still watching them with a hurt expression. "It doesn't matter," Sarah replied, brushing an invisible speck off Lily's sleeve. "We don't know her, and people sometimes have motives we don't understand. I'm just trying to keep you safe." "But," Lily's voice trailed off, uncertain and a little sad. She couldn't quite articulate the way Emily's smile had made her feel, the way the offered cookies had felt like a tiny invitation into something warm and kind. It was just a simple act of sharing, wasn't it? Back on the swings, Emily lingered, the scene replaying in her mind. She thought of how her own mother, who'd always been so open-hearted, had encouraged her to be herself and to see kindness in others. It was a lesson she'd taken to heart. But today, that belief felt shaky. For the first time, she felt like an outsider in a place where she just wanted to belong. Meanwhile, Sarah glanced at Emily out of the corner of her eye, feeling a flicker of unease. Part of her knew she'd been curt, but old habits and ingrained beliefs tugged at her, prompting her to set boundaries she couldn't even fully explain to herself. To her, these interactions were charged with unspoken fears and protective instincts, ones she'd been carrying long before she'd even had Lily. As she held her daughter's hand, she tried to focus on the practicalities, the safety, the precautions, but she couldn't quite shake the discomfort that came from looking into her daughter's sad, questioning eyes. Finally, Emily gathered her courage, deciding not to let the moment end on a bitter note. She walked over to Sarah and Lily, her chin up, determined to speak her mind. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I just thought maybe Lily might want someone to play with." She swallowed hard, her eyes flickering toward Lily's. "I didn't mean any harm." Sarah took in Emily's earnest expression, sensing the sincerity in her words, but still, she remained guarded. She nodded politely, her lips in a tight line. "Thank you, Emily," she said, in a tone that was more dismissive than appreciative. She turned to Lily and murmured, "Come on, honey, let's go." Lily's gaze lingered on Emily as her mother guided her away. Her heart tugged in two directions, between loyalty to her mother and the small, budding curiosity about Emily's kindness. And as they walked away, Emily felt the weight of misunderstanding pressing down on her, wondering if kindness and openness would always be met with walls and wary glances. The following Saturday, Emily found herself once again at the park, a place she loved for its familiar sights and sounds. She had tried to forget the awkward interaction from earlier in the week, yet it still lingered in her mind, the unanswered questions weighing her down. Today, she brought her younger brother, Caleb, who was 4 and already darting toward the slides with an energy that made Emily smile. The day was bright and cheerful, with families scattered across the park, chatting and laughing. As she looked around, Emily noticed Lily and her mother sitting on a bench near the swings. Lily seemed lost in thought, kicking her legs back and forth, while Sarah watched her, her eyes narrowing every so often at the kids playing nearby. Emily hesitated, wondering if she should even try to approach them again. Part of her wanted to somehow make up for the previous awkwardness. But before she could decide, something unexpected happened. As she watched, Lily suddenly looked up, her eyes catching Emily's from across the park. There was a flicker of recognition, and then, surprisingly, a small, shy wave. Emily's heart lifted, her face breaking into a hopeful smile. She waved back, a tentative truce of sorts. But before she could even consider walking over, she saw Sarah glance up, her eyes following Lily's gaze. The moment Sarah noticed Emily, her expression hardened, and she quickly turned her attention back to her daughter. "Lily," Sarah said, her tone clipped, "I don't want you staring. It's rude." "But Mom, Lily began. But Sarah cut her off with a quick shake of her head. "Enough," Sarah said quietly, her voice firm and laced with an edge that silenced Lily immediately. She didn't raise her voice, but there was a warning there, a sense of finality that left no room for questioning. Emily watched this exchange, her heart sinking. She could sense that something was wrong, that there was more to Sarah's reaction than simple overprotectiveness. But as she tried to process it, Caleb came running over, breathless and laughing. His small face flushed from the excitement of the playground. "Emily, did you see how high I went?" he exclaimed, holding her hand, his excitement a welcome distraction. She smiled, ruffling his curly hair, but her mind remained on Lily and her mother, and the lingering tension she couldn't quite put into words. As Emily turned back to look, she noticed Sarah gathering up her things, her lips pressed tightly together as she prepared to leave. She could sense Sarah's discomfort, as if she were fleeing an invisible confrontation, one that Emily didn't fully understand. But then, as Sarah rose from the bench and began to lead Lily away, Lily pulled back slightly. "Mom," she said, her voice hesitant. "Can I just say bye to her?" "No, Lily," Sarah said, not even pausing in her stride. Her grip tightened on Lily's hand, and her voice held an edge of impatience. "I told you, I don't want you talking to strangers." Lily looked back at Emily, her face falling as her mother pulled her along. The moment felt heavy and strange, like something important was being left unsaid, an invisible wall blocking what could have been a simple friendship. Emily watched them walk away, feeling the sting of rejection once more. She held Caleb's hand tightly, trying to focus on the joyful chatter of the park around her, but the moment left a bitter taste in her mouth. She couldn't understand why her friendly gesture had been met with such resistance, and why Lily, who seemed to want a friend, was being kept away. As they disappeared into the distance, Emily sat down on a nearby bench, her heart heavy. The openness and innocence of her gesture had collided with something she didn't fully grasp, a world of guarded glances and closed doors that she felt determined to understand. For now, though, she was left alone in the park. A small knot of sadness lodged deep within her, as her thoughts lingered on the friend she had nearly made. That evening, back at home, Lily sat quietly at the dinner table, picking at her food. Her father, Tom, glanced over at her with a small smile. "Hey, Lilipad, you seem a little down. Everything okay?" he asked, his tone warm and encouraging. Lily glanced up at him, her blue eyes clouded with questions. She wanted to ask, to tell him about the girl at the park, Emily, who had been so friendly, but she hesitated, glancing quickly at her mother, who was busy setting plates on the table with a determined focus, her expression unreadable. After a moment's silence, Lily took a deep breath and decided to speak up. "Mom," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "why didn't you want me to talk to Emily?" Sarah looked at her, her face tightening slightly. She hadn't expected the question, but she maintained her composure. "Honey, it's just, you have to be careful with people you don't know. I don't want you getting too close to strangers, that's all." "But she didn't feel like a stranger," Lily insisted, her small voice growing stronger with each word. "She was just kind. She wanted to share her cookies. She wasn't doing anything wrong." Tom looked between his daughter and his wife, sensing the unease in the air. He cleared his throat, trying to ease the tension. "Maybe Emily was just being friendly," he offered, giving Sarah a gentle nudge with his words. "Kids can be pretty harmless, you know?" Sarah's jaw tightened, and she folded her arms across her chest, her gaze dropping to the table. "I understand that, Tom," she replied, her tone clipped, "but we have to be cautious, especially with people we don't know well." Lily looked down at her plate, her heart heavy. She could sense there was more to her mother's reaction, something she didn't fully understand. But the confusion and disappointment in her chest kept growing, and she couldn't help but ask, "Mom, do you think Emily is different from me?" Sarah's face softened for a brief moment, a flicker of emotion crossing her features. She looked at her daughter, then down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting nervously. She seemed to be grappling with something deep inside, an internal struggle that Lily didn't fully understand. "Lily, it's not about different or the same. It's complicated, that's all." "But why?" Lily pressed, her voice wavering with a mixture of frustration and sadness. "It doesn't feel complicated to me. She was nice. I liked her." Sarah's gaze drifted away, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't have a clear answer, and the words she could have used seemed tangled in her mind. She could see the pain and confusion in Lily's eyes, and part of her wanted to ease that, to tell her daughter it was okay. But the other part of her held firm, bound by beliefs she hadn't fully questioned until now. After a long pause, Sarah let out a sigh, looking back at Lily. "I know it's hard to understand, honey. Sometimes we have to make decisions that don't always feel good. But I'm just trying to protect you, that's all." Lily dropped her gaze, her shoulders slumping as she processed her mother's words. They didn't make her feel any better. In fact, they only made her feel more isolated, as if a wall had been placed between her and something wonderful she was being kept from. Tom reached out and put a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "It's okay to feel that way, Lily. Maybe one day you'll understand." Lily nodded slowly, though her heart felt heavy with disappointment. She wanted to understand, but everything still felt wrong. The simple kindness of Emily's gesture, her warm smile, the friendly wave, all of it felt innocent and right. And now, sitting at the table in silence, Lily realized how much she'd hoped for a friend like Emily. The next day, Emily found herself thinking about Lily and her mother as she walked through the park with her mom, Miss Turner. The trees cast long shadows over the pathways, and the late afternoon sun spilled over the colorful autumn leaves, painting the park with a warm, golden glow. Normally, this would have been a place of comfort and joy for Emily, but today, her steps felt heavy, her heart weighed down by the memory of the rejection. "Emily, sweetheart, you've been quiet," Miss Turner observed, her gaze soft as she looked at her daughter. "Is something bothering you?" Emily hesitated. She hadn't mentioned the incident to her mother, not wanting to stir up unnecessary worries. But the feeling of sadness was too heavy to ignore. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Mom, have you ever tried to be nice to someone, but they didn't want to be nice back?" Miss Turner's face softened, and she tilted her head thoughtfully. "Yes, honey, I think most people have felt that way at some point. It can be hard when people don't respond the way we hope." Emily kicked a small pebble along the path, her voice barely a whisper. "There was this girl at the park, Lily. She was younger than me, and she looked lonely, so I went over and offered her some cookies. But her mom didn't like it. She told her not to talk to me." Miss Turner's brow furrowed, a shadow passing over her expression. She gently put a hand on Emily's shoulder, guiding her to sit with her on a nearby bench. "I'm sorry that happened, sweetheart. You were just trying to be kind." Emily nodded, looking down at her hands. "It just felt wrong, like I did something bad, even though I didn't. I just wanted to be her friend." But her mom seemed angry about it. Miss Turner let out a slow breath, understanding the situation more deeply than she would have liked. She wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders, pulling her close. "Sometimes, people have their own ideas and beliefs that make them react in ways we don't expect. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong, okay?" Emily looked up at her mom, her eyes clouded with confusion. Why would someone be upset over just sharing cookies? "I don't get it." Miss Turner hesitated, choosing her words carefully. She wanted to be honest with her daughter, but knew this was a difficult topic to explain. "Well, honey, sometimes people have fears or judgments about others who might look different or come from different backgrounds. It's not fair, and it's certainly not right, but it's something that happens." Emily's face twisted in sadness and frustration. "But that doesn't make sense. Lily looked like she wanted a friend, and I wanted her to feel welcome." "I know, baby," Miss Turner said softly, brushing a curl away from Emily's face. "And that's what makes you so special. You have a big heart, and you see people for who they are. Not everyone is able to do that, and it's something we're all still learning. Sometimes, it takes people longer to understand." Emily leaned her head against her mom's shoulder, feeling comforted but still troubled. The world felt a little colder, a little harder to understand, and the hurt from Lily's rejection left her feeling small and uncertain. Her mother's words helped, but the experience was a wound she knew would take time to heal. Miss Turner held her daughter close, her heart heavy with empathy and pride. She knew that Emily's kindness was a rare gift, and though it would sometimes leave her vulnerable to pain, it was a strength she cherished deeply in her daughter. As they sat together on the bench, Miss Turner resolved to help her daughter navigate this confusing reality, to teach her that her kindness was worth holding on to, even when others didn't always understand. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the gentle rustle of leaves and the warmth of the setting sun, Emily felt her mother's love wrap around her like a shield, reminding her that kindness, even when met with rejection, was something worth believing in. Later that evening, after dinner, Lily sat on her bed, hugging her favorite stuffed bear as she replayed the events at the park over in her mind. The soft glow of her bedside lamp cast a warm light over her room, and outside her window, the quiet hum of the suburban night was her only companion. She kept thinking about Emily, the warmth of her smile, the friendly way she'd shared her cookies. The memory made her feel both happy and sad, a strange blend of emotions she wasn't used to. Unable to keep her questions to herself any longer, Lily went downstairs, where her mom was tidying up in the kitchen. Tom was reading in the living room, occasionally glancing at them from his chair. Taking a deep breath, Lily approached her mother, determined to find answers. "Mom?" she asked softly, standing by the counter. Sarah looked over, her face softening as she took in her daughter's serious expression. "Yes, honey? Can we talk? About Emily?" Lily asked, her voice a mix of hesitancy and determination. Sarah paused, setting down the dish she'd been washing. She wiped her hands on a towel, her gaze settling on Lily with a guarded look. "What do you want to know, sweetheart?" Lily bit her lip, gathering her thoughts. "I don't understand why you didn't want me to talk to her. She was just being nice. And she looked like she wanted a friend. Just like me." Sarah took a deep breath, glancing over at Tom, who had set his book down and was listening. She knew this moment would come sooner or later, but she wasn't sure she was ready to have this conversation. "Lily, it's complicated. Sometimes there are differences between people that make things difficult." "Differences?" Lily repeated, tilting her head in confusion. "Like what?" Sarah struggled to find the right words. She knew her explanation would shape the way her daughter saw others, and that was a responsibility she didn't take lightly. Sometimes, people come from different backgrounds, and those backgrounds can create misunderstandings or cause people to act in ways that might not be safe. "But Emily didn't feel unsafe," Lily said, her voice firmer now. "She was just being friendly. She didn't do anything wrong, did she?" "No, honey, she didn't," Sarah admitted, feeling a pang of guilt. "But I just wanted to be careful. I don't want you to get hurt or be in situations that might not be good for you." Lily's face fell, her brows knitting together. She wasn't satisfied with her mother's answer. It didn't make sense to her. "Mom, are you saying I shouldn't be friends with someone just because they look different?" Tom cleared his throat, finally stepping into the conversation. "Sarah, maybe this is a good time to talk about what we believe and why, and how sometimes we have to be willing to rethink things. It's not easy, but it's important." He looked at Lily, his expression kind but serious. "What your mom is trying to say, Lily, is that sometimes people have ideas that make them cautious about others, even if those ideas aren't necessarily right." Lily looked between her parents, her heart pounding as she tried to make sense of their words. "But if it's not right, then why are we doing it?" "I don't understand." Sarah's face softened, and for a moment, she looked away, guilt flickering in her eyes. She hadn't expected her daughter to question her so deeply, and it forced her to confront her own beliefs in a way that felt uncomfortable. "You're right, Lily. Maybe I need to think about why I felt the way I did. Sometimes adults have ideas they've held onto for a long time, and it's hard to let them go, even if they aren't fair." Lily nodded, feeling a small sense of relief that her mother was at least open to thinking about it. "I liked Emily, Mom. I don't want to be mean to her just because she's different from me. She was really nice, and I think I could be her friend if you'd let me." Sarah looked at her daughter, feeling both pride and a strange sense of vulnerability. Lily's innocence and openness reminded her of a kindness she had once known in herself, before life had taught her to be cautious, even skeptical. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face, smiling softly. "Maybe you're teaching me something important, Lily. Maybe it's time for me to listen to you, too." In that moment, a quiet understanding passed between them. Lily felt a renewed sense of hope, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, things could change. She hugged her mom, grateful for the chance to share her heart, and as Sarah held her daughter close, she realized that Lily's honesty had opened a door she hadn't expected, a door to understanding, empathy, and perhaps even change. The next morning, as sunlight streamed into the kitchen, Sarah sipped her coffee slowly, her mind turning over the conversation she'd had with Lily the night before. She knew that her daughter's questions had touched on something deeper, something Sarah herself had avoided examining for a long time. She glanced over at Tom, who was reading the newspaper at the table, aware that he, too, had been affected by the discussion. Lily came into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, and hopped onto a stool, watching her mother carefully. Sensing the tension, Tom gave them both a small nod and headed out to the backyard, giving mother and daughter the space they needed. Sarah took a deep breath, setting her mug down, and turned to face Lily, deciding it was time for honesty. "Lily, I want to talk more about what you asked me last night, she began, her voice soft but steady. About why I didn't want you to be friends with Emily. I think maybe I owe you an explanation. Lily's face brightened slightly, hope flickering in her eyes. Okay, Mom. I just don't understand why you felt that way. Emily was really nice, and I liked her a lot. Sarah looked down at her hands, feeling a mix of shame and uncertainty. You know, Lily, when I was young, my parents taught me certain things about people who were different from us. They had their own ideas about who we should be friends with and who we should keep at a distance. It wasn't always fair, but it was the way things were. Lily tilted her head, listening carefully. But that was a long time ago, right, Mom? People are different now. Sarah nodded, feeling the sting of her daughter's words. Yes, that was a long time ago. And you're right, people should be different now. But sometimes, we carry those old ideas with us without realizing it, even if they don't make sense anymore. Lily's face turned thoughtful as she took in her mother's words. So, is that why you didn't want me to be friends with Emily? Because she looked different from us? Sarah's breath caught, and she felt the weight of her answer pressing down on her. Yes, Lily, she said quietly, her voice tinged with regret. That's part of it. And I know that's not a good reason. I realize now that I let my old ideas get in the way of something good for you, and maybe even for me. Lily looked down at the countertop, her fingers tracing circles on the cool surface. I don't want to think that way, Mom. I like Emily. She's just nice. I don't see why that should matter. Sarah's heart softened, and she reached out, gently placing her hand over Lily's. You're right, sweetheart. And I'm so proud of you for seeing things so clearly. Sometimes, kids have a way of understanding things that adults complicate. She took a deep breath, feeling a determination rise within her. I don't want you to feel like you have to follow ideas that don't feel right to you. I want you to be better than I was, better than I am. Lily looked up, her face brightening with a cautious smile. Does that mean I can be friends with Emily? Sarah nodded, smiling softly. Yes, it does. And maybe I need to try to get to know her too. It's time for me to see things from a different perspective, and maybe you can help me do that. Lily's smile grew, relief flooding her face as she hugged her mom tightly. Thank you, Mom. I just know you'll like her if you get to know her. Sarah held her daughter close, feeling a mix of emotions, pride, regret, and hope. She realized that, through her daughter's openness, she had a chance to break free from the outdated beliefs that had shaped her, to open herself up to the possibility of new friendships and new understanding. As they embraced, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning of a journey she hadn't anticipated. But for Lily's sake, and perhaps her own, she was willing to try, to make space for kindness, and to let go of the fears that had held her back. A few days later, Sarah found herself back at the park with Lily. She had suggested the outing, hoping it would give her a chance to put her newfound resolve into action. The park was bustling with life as usual, kids running back and forth, laughter filling the air. Sarah felt a nervous energy as she watched Lily scan the playground, clearly looking for Emily. Then, almost as if fate had intervened, they spotted her. Emily was near the swings, sitting quietly with a book in her lap. She hadn't noticed them yet, and for a moment, Sarah hesitated, her old instincts tugging at her. But she took a deep breath, reminding herself of her promise to Lily and to herself. She nodded encouragingly at her daughter. Go on, Lily. Why don't you say hi? Lily's face lit up, and she darted over to Emily, her footsteps light with excitement. Emily, she called, waving as she approached. Emily looked up, surprise flashing across her face before she broke into a smile. Hi, Lily, she said, standing up. I didn't know you'd be here today. Lily grinned, glancing back at her mom, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. Me neither. But I was hoping I'd see you. She paused, her cheeks pink. I wanted to say sorry about last time. I didn't mean to ignore you. My mom she didn't understand. Emily's smile softened, and she shrugged, her expression kind. It's okay. I get it. Sometimes grown-ups are complicated. They both giggled, sharing a moment of understanding that seemed to melt away any lingering awkwardness. As they settled into talking, Sarah watched from a distance, feeling her heart swell with a mixture of relief and admiration for her daughter's courage. After a few minutes, Lily called out to her, "Mom, do you want to come over and meet Emily?" Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety but forced a smile, determined to follow through. She walked over, feeling a bit self-conscious under Emily's curious gaze. "Hello, Emily," she said, her voice soft but genuine. "It's nice to see you again." Emily nodded, her expression polite but reserved. "Hi, Mrs. Harper." There was a brief, awkward silence as Sarah gathered her thoughts, searching for the right words. "I wanted to apologize," she began, choosing her words carefully. "I realize I may have come across as unfriendly last time. That wasn't fair to you." Emily's eyes softened, and she offered a small nod. "Thank you, Mrs. Harper. I just wanted to share with Lily. I thought we could be friends." Sarah felt a pang of guilt, but she also felt something else, a chance for understanding, for moving forward. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said, her voice growing steadier. "Lily could use a friend like you." Lily's face lit up at her mother's words, and she gave Emily a hopeful smile. The two girls started chatting again, laughter bubbling up between them as they talked about their favorite games, snacks, and the best places to hide and seek. Sarah listened quietly, feeling her heart lighten as she watched the ease and joy between the two girls. As the afternoon went on, Sarah noticed how naturally the friendship blossomed between them. Emily's kindness and warmth, and Lily's open-hearted curiosity created a bond that felt right, even if it had taken her time to see it. She realized now how her own fears had clouded her perspective, but seeing the happiness on Lily's face made it clear that her daughter's choice was the right one. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Sarah smiled at Emily and Lily, her heart filled with a new sense of peace. She had let go of the barriers she'd built, and in doing so, she'd opened a door not just for her daughter, but for herself as well. As the days passed, Emily and Lily's friendship grew deeper, and soon, they were nearly inseparable at the park. They laughed, shared snacks, and invented games that only they seemed to understand. Watching them, Sarah felt a quiet sense of pride, not just in Lily but in herself for letting go of her old assumptions. Yet, there was a lingering tension in her heart, an unresolved feeling that kept her on edge whenever she saw Emily's mother, Miss Turner, nearby. One Saturday, as Emily and Lily ran off to play tag near the trees, Sarah saw Miss Turner sitting on a bench nearby, a peaceful smile on her face as she watched the girls. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This was her chance to mend things completely, to address the tension directly. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, and walked over, forcing herself to be open to whatever might unfold. "Hello," Sarah said softly, giving Miss Turner a tentative smile. I'm Sarah Harper, Lily's mom." Miss Turner looked up, her expression friendly but cautious. "Hello, Sarah. I'm Denise. It's nice to meet you." Sarah took a seat beside her, feeling the weight of her words as she prepared to speak. "I wanted to say thank you for being so understanding, especially after our awkward start. I know I might have given you the wrong impression." Denise's smile remained, but her gaze softened with a hint of understanding. "I appreciate that, Sarah, and I understand. We all have things we're working through." Sarah looked down, twisting her hands nervously. "To be honest, I let some of my own fears and outdated beliefs get in the way. Watching Lily and Emily has shown me a different perspective, and it's helped me see things I didn't fully realize about myself." Denise nodded, her expression gentle. "We all have moments like that, Sarah. Growing up, I faced a lot of situations where people judged me before they even knew me. I'm grateful that our daughters don't see those boundaries. They've shown us what true acceptance looks like." Sarah felt a lump in her throat, her chest tight with a mixture of regret and gratitude. "I'm sorry for making things difficult. I've been watching how happy Lily is with Emily, and I'm so glad they found each other." Denise reached out and gave Sarah's hand a reassuring squeeze. "The important thing is that we're both here now, supporting them. They're teaching us how to be better, and that's a gift." The two mothers sat in silence for a moment, watching their daughters play, the sound of their laughter filling the air. In that moment, Sarah felt the last of her reservations dissolve, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude. She looked at Denise, a newfound respect and friendship blossoming between them. As the sun began to dip below the trees, casting a warm, golden light over the park, Sarah felt an unfamiliar yet welcome sense of peace. She knew that this friendship, between both the girls and their families, had the potential to grow into something truly special, grounded in understanding, respect, and the courage to let go of old fears. In the weeks that followed, the bond between the two families deepened. Emily and Lily spent more and more time together, not only at the park but also at each other's homes. Their laughter echoed through Sarah's house when Emily visited, filling it with a warmth Sarah hadn't realized she'd been missing. Denise, too, felt a sense of joy and pride as she watched her daughter thrive in this newfound friendship. It was clear that, together, these two little girls were breaking down boundaries that adults sometimes struggle to overcome. One evening, as the families gathered for a backyard barbecue at the Harper's home, Sarah found herself laughing alongside Denise as they swapped stories and watched the girls race around the yard with Caleb. The atmosphere was light and easy, as if they'd known each other for years rather than just weeks. Sarah felt a quiet sense of gratitude, not only for Lily's friendship with Emily, but also for the change this experience had sparked in her. As dusk settled, casting a soft glow over the yard, Sarah pulled Lily aside for a moment. She looked into her daughter's bright eyes, filled with the joy of friendship and a deeper understanding that made Sarah feel proud. "Lily," she began softly, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've taught me so much, about kindness, about courage, and about looking at people for who they truly are." Lily smiled, her cheeks glowing with pride. "I'm proud of you too, Mom. I knew you'd like Emily and Ms. Turner if you got to know them. They're really great." Sarah felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "They are. And so are you. You've shown me how important it is to keep my heart open, even when it's hard. I'm grateful for that, and I promise to keep learning from you." Nearby, Denise watched the two of them with a soft smile, sensing the shift that had taken place in Sarah. She could see the transformation, the way Sarah had embraced this friendship, letting go of past fears and choosing a path of acceptance. It was a choice that would ripple out, affecting not only their families but also the community around them. As the night drew to a close, the families gathered around a small fire pit, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Emily and Lily sat side by side, giggling as they tried to make the perfect s'more. Watching them, Sarah felt a profound sense of hope, a hope that this friendship would be a lasting one, built on trust, understanding, and the courage to see past differences. In that moment, Sarah realized that this journey had not only enriched her daughter's life, but had also transformed her own. By opening her heart, she had made room for new connections, new joys, and a vision of the world that was broader, kinder, and more accepting. And as she looked at Denise and the girls, Sarah knew that this friendship would be a foundation of love and understanding that would guide them all in the years to come. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and watch this next story. It's truly moving.